Chicago. It's not Chicago. It's Chicago.
I am Mick Dumke of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And I am Ben Joravsky of the Chicago Reader. And before we introduce Congressman Gutiérrez, who's our guest tonight, Mick will not want me to do this, but I feel compelled to say we should give a big hand to Mick. He just got married, so congratulations.
Thanks.
And so it's a great year for Mick Dumke. He's looking at me shooting lasers. He didn't want me to say that. But I could not let that moment pass without saying congratulations, mazel tov, and all those other things. Joining the club, right, Congressman? You've
Absolutely.
been a member of the married club for a long time. This is a lot of fun for me to have Congressman Gutiérrez on stage. I was just telling him that he looks so much younger than I do. I don't know how that happened, but we go back a long time to about the early 1980s, 1982. I think it was when I met you. I had just moved to Chicago, and you had just sort of settled in. You were just getting started. So before we start grilling you on the local events,
In the friendliest way possible.
We're going to have a conversation.
Yeah, right.
well, you know how it
Didn't
goes.
you know?
With me.
The spotlight will be shining bright on you in just a second. Okay.
We have the oven, turning it on right now.
All right.
So just 82. Let's get this established, because there's so much part of your past that's sort of like myth, like a part of a myth. Were you a cab driver, or is that just something like an urban legend? Is this true that you were a cab driver? I can't remember this. I remember you as a social worker, but were you a cab driver?
Yeah, I was driving a cab because in 1983, Harold Washington was elected, won the Democratic nomination for mayor of the city of Chicago.
And this is when there was a partisan primary.
Was a partisan
still party
primary.
primaries,
Yes,
and
there
then
was.
the general election.
And I owned a home over on Homer, 2300 West on Homer, my first house. So I was very reliant on the precinct captain for making sure the tree got trimmed. And remember, they used to hand out garbage cans, the city, so, bring the garbage. They were really nice, the Rostenkowski ones, because they give you lids for your garbage cans, which was, rodents.
We'll get into Rustenkowski.
No, but I'm just trying to put it into some perspective.
Yeah.
So when they came to my house, so I went and I voted for, they came to my house and they said, and I said, I can't vote for Rich Daley, and I can't vote for Jane Byrne. I said, I'm going to vote for the black dude. I told him like that. I said, for Harold Washington. I went to one of his rallies. He's fantastic. And, the precinct captains, they didn't care because they figured he wasn't going to win. So they said, well, this guy's just going to waste his vote, right? We're still win for...
They probably were for Jane Byrne.
I was going to say,
they were for Rich Daley.
Rostenkowski. You're right. Rostenkowski.
And so they said, can we have your vote for the alderman, which is their bread and butter, right? I said, no problem.
Was that Gabinski?
Gabinski. Okay. So I told them they left my house. Yeah. Long story short, they came back after Washington wins the primary, came with Epton posters to my house.
Oh, yeah, that was.
and Ben, remind everyone who Epton is.
Well, right. Yeah. Epton was the Republican nominee. Yeah.
Remember, we have a primary system.
We have a primary. So he's running against Harold Washington. It's going to be, April of 83.
That's correct.
And it's Epton before it's too late. Right. Now...
No racial coding in that.
No, there was no race.
Message.
Now, I don't think they quite understood that I grew up in segregated Chicago. I was born in Chicago in December of 1953. Yeah. I still remember segregated Chicago, right? Before there was a voting rights and a civil rights. I remember. And I said, so I yelled at them. I chased them, and they said, there's nothing you could do about it. And you know how I am, Ben. Yeah. You don't tell me there's nothing I could do about it. I called every one of my leftist radical friends and all of the ones from college that you still knew, and I got them all together, and I said, we're going to beat these people. Yeah. And we went into the precinct, but I'm not alone in this. It's the way Harold won. People like me and others like me who were on the sidelines, we were involved in keeping schools open.
Wait, had you met Harold by the 1983?
I had seen him at Northwest Hall
Mm-hmm.
All right,
Right,
and
Northwest
he
Hall.
came to an event with Northwest Community Organization, the old Salalinsky people, and they were organizing in this neighborhood before it gentrified. The Salalinsky, we were building affordable housing. So, anyways, long story short, I campaigned for him vigorously. We won the precinct, and then I said, "Wow, it's 54 precincts. If I can elect a black man in a predominantly white precinct with virtually no African Americans, right? I should do okay with a Puerto Rican, right? So I figured I'd replicate this 54 times and I'd beat Rostenkowski
Right.
for committeeman.
Yes,
No,
yes.
seriously, that was my
That's
thinking.
a bold move.
That-
All right,
that-
so now that was
Oh.
in 1984.
That's 84. So
Yeah.
I drove a cab.
And,
So you
and,
drove
and Rostenkowski, of course, everyone knows Rostenkowski's name, but his family had run this ward, and this is the old 32nd
Yes,
ward
sir.
here, right?
Yes, sir.
His dad before him, then him, and obviously House Ways and Means chairman
Yes.
in Congress, in U.S. House. So you decide, okay, I helped win the precinct for mayor,
Right?
so why not? I might as well take on the
I
most
might as well
powerful
take
guy
out-
in Chicago.
Right. And plus, for me, the campaign, he was a paper tiger, right? That we could take on Rostenkowski. And I went about collecting signatures. And I got to tell you, we collected signatures, but it was hard. People were very, very fearful. You think today, politics, you don't know what it was like. People were afraid to sign a petition and open the door to anybody that was not have the blessing of the local political establishment. So people were afraid. But anyways, long story, I ran. So then I quit my job with the Department of Children and Family
Okay,
Services.
that's where you were a social worker.
And then
That's
I
what
went to
meant
drive a cab because you could drive a cab 3-4 days a week, 14, 15 hours, and then campaign for 3 days. I remember I had a daughter, Omaida. I had a wife, a family, a mortgage, a house. So I had to do that. So anyways, I got a whopping 24.8% of the vote.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but 3 months later, Harold Washington called me. Ernie Bearfield was his chief of
Yes,
staff.
he was, yes.
And he gave me a call. He said, the mayor's looking for young people like yourself to come and work in his administration. And I said, well, it's going to be driving this cab.
Yeah.
So I went from cab driver to general superintendent of the Bureau of Electricity.
Oh, it was electricity. Okay.
Yeah.
What did you know about electricity?
What did Chewy know about water department?
Oh, man. Yeah.
He was deputy commissioner. He had an even bigger
Yeah,
title.
yeah, he had a bigger
than I
title.
did.
Yeah.
I don't think Harold. Listen, no, the audience. I think the mayor made a prudent, wise decision. Look where Chewy and I are today.
Yeah, that's right.
Come on.
Look at you guys. Yeah.
Okay,
You'll
so
be
I-
running against each other for mayor in 2 years.
That will never happen.
Okay.
That will never happen.
Okay, so then...
We'll flip a coin.
You'll flip a coin. Is that how you did it this time around? Hopefully, whoever doesn't run will endorse the other one this time
Yeah.
around. All right, anyway, so... Sorry, man, I couldn't resist.
We're gonna get to
Feel
that.
like
We're
this
gonna
is
get-
a ring.
We'll get to that. We'll get to that.
All right.
But I mean, I don't want to indulge too much, but this is my favorite. I mean, the two of us are sort of like 70s guys, and like the 80s was our coming of age. So, yes. And then, of course, there was the fantastical, amazing, incredible, was a 1986 runoff for alderman, which, of course, why don't you tell?
Yeah, first of all, what made you think you could run for alderman after having been walloped as the committeeman?
Well, he was running the electricity department.
Oh,
Meg.
yeah, of course. Obvious springboard.
Well, so when I was in college, I was the president of the Union for Puerto Rican Students, and we published a newspaper called Que Onde Sola, which means May It Wave Alone, for Puerto Rican independence. And I started thinking I lived in Puerto Rico, and the first party I was involved in was the Puerto Rican Independence Party. It's kind of socialist party in Puerto Rico, but socialist a la Bernie Sanders. Socialist. Not
Democratic
Marxist, Lenin.
socialist,
Yeah,
yeah.
let's just put that clear as being videotaped.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't know if you, for those of you who understand, remember that 1972 was the first year 18-year-olds could vote. So I was born in 53, so I was in Puerto Rico, I was involved. And I said to myself, what did I do? I said, I sold a newspaper, right? We published a newspaper. We had a propaganda piece. So I established a newspaper, the 26th Ward it was called the Westtown 26th Ward Independent Political Organization
Yeah.
because we weren't quite sure which ward was going to be
Right.
the Hispanic
Yeah,
ward.
yeah.
So we gave ourselves a little
Leeway. there.
leeway.
Yeah.
And then so I did that. Then I wrote a constitution like the one we had at the Union for Puerto Rican Students.
Okay.
And we elected a president and a treasurer. And then we started doing fundraising. And then we started doing all this in 80. I still remember, Harold was such a great guy that I was literally nobody. And he took me off the streets driving a cab after a devastating defeat by Ralph Stankowski. Gave me an incredible job and opportunity
Yes, he did.
to work for the
Yes.
city of Chicago. Really an incredible opportunity. And then he'd show up to my fundraisers. And I was like Luis Gutiérrez 6 months ago, the cab driver. And the main speaker at my fundraiser, and people said, well, this kid must have something going for him. He's got the mayor of the city of Chicago coming. And that was all. I think the mayor saw this all as a prelude to what? To taking control of the city council.
He was thinking ahead.
He was thinking ahead, and so Chewy and I would become the 24th and the 25th votes in his new majority, and we would take Ed Verdoliak and banish him.
Right.
And Ed Kelly from the, I know a lot of people don't
They
remember,
don't remember this.
Yeah,
Ed
but-
Kelly was in charge of the Park District. They had another person in charge of the CHA.
And the point is that Ed Verdoliak and the White Aldermen controlled city council.
They did.
For the first few years of
They did.
Mayor Washington's
For the first
term.
3 years.
Yeah.
And then the first thing we did is we passed the general obligation bond. We raised taxes. They had smothered the city of Chicago by reducing the levy each and every year to the point. We remember when
Yes, I
Bernie
remember all
Stone
this.
called me
Yes.
a peepsqueak?
Yes, I remember. I
'Cause
was
I
going to
went on the
ask you
city-
about this.
I went on the city council floor as they
Yeah.
were debating the budget,
Yeah.
and they were all, the mayor is terrible. So I took everybody's
Yeah.
I took everybody's property taxes out. I had their property taxes in 83, and I had their property taxes in 86. So I went around like saying, Ed Verdoliak, you should say thank you to Mayor. He's reduced your taxes a whopping $1,500, you ingrate.
Yeah.
And then I went
did the
around
Bernie Stone.
and then I touched Rhodey. I shouldn't have done the first ward.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah, you shouldn't have.
I shouldn't have. But I survived to tell about it.
Yeah, you're still
And then I mentioned his taxes. But anyways, the point was to make the contradiction clear that they had reduced the levy in order to strangle Harold Washington
Yeah.
and any ability he would have to bring changes and reform to the city of Chicago. And, we kicked everybody off the Park District Board. We kicked everybody off the CHA, the Board of Education. And then all of the progressives took positions in all of those boards.
Now, wait. Before
Yeah, I was going to say, we want to talk for a second about how you got elected,
Yeah.
because that's an
Okay.
incredible story, right? So, long story short, there was basically a court-ordered special election.
Yes, there was.
Because the remap earlier had been unfair to Black and Hispanic voters.
Absolutely. That's what they found. They found that when the Chicago City Council designed the 50 wards in 1981 in the redistricting, that they had diluted the voting strength of minority communities.
correct.
And for the people here in this audience tonight, it's very simple. You can drive down North Avenue right now to Western and North. It's not far from here, right? The northwest corner was the 31st ward. The west side was the 32nd. And then the other side was the 1st ward. I mean, there was like Puerto Ricans living here, Puerto Ricans living here.
correct.
So they could go to church together. They could shop together.
Right, but they
Their
couldn't
children
vote.
could go to school
Yes.
together, but they could not vote together. And so and that happened throughout the city of Chicago. And the reason they did that was to dilute our voting strength.
That's correct.
And interesting, Harold Washington only spent a couple of years as congressman because we elect him.
It is, right.
But during his 2 years, he changed the Voting Rights Act so that we did not have to prove their malice or intent when they.
You just had to do the
We just had to
consequence.
prove the consequences. And that was one of the things he was. So it's very interesting that he spent a little time there,
Yeah.
got something amended to the Voting Rights Act, and then we were able to use it. But remember, we ran, and we had political organizations, but we had hundreds of people.
Yeah.
I mean, this was, I wish we had online so I could ask for $27 from 1,000 people,
Yeah.
and it would have been a little bit easier.
Yeah, it was a little.
But we didn't have
yeah,
that
we didn't have-
social media.
Well,
then.
okay, so in 1986, a special election, and there were several of them across the city, including in black wards, where Harold's candidates obviously raced to victory, and so the pivotal ward.
Right.
Came down to the 26th ward where you were against my old friend Manny Torres.
Manny Torres.
And so you had won. You actually had
I had.
won on election night.
I did.
And so during the recount, as I recall, they discovered in the basement of City Hall, correct me if my memory's wrong,
Okay.
6 write-in votes for some guy named Blazinski. Am I correct on that?
So there were 3 candidates for alderman. There was me, the winner, and then there was Manny Torres,
my
the
old
machine
friend.
hack.
Oh,
from
hey, that's
Verdoliak.
my old friend.
Oh, his old friend. Now he's sensitive. Okay. So now that I know what the rules of engagement are, I'll be nicer.
Okay.
And then there was a writing candidate. We knocked him off the ballot named Blazinski.
He was a crossing guard.
It was a crossing guard in Wicker Park,
Yes,
right there on
yeah.
Schiller and Damon.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
And anyways, it was about 2 weeks after the election, and it was in the basement of Cook County Jail down there on where the court system is on 26th in California.
They did the counting. I forgot that detail.
It was in the basement there because that's where they would take all the boxes.
Okay.
Where you threw your ballot in these boxes, and they would take them in storage.
Yeah.
So they got Ed Verdoliak got a judge, which was really difficult to get a Cook County judge.
For Eddie Verdoliak.
For Eddie
Yeah.
Verdoliak.
Yeah.
He named them all, right?
Yeah.
To get a judge to order them to inspect
Right. Okay.
all of the boxes in case there might be some votes that weren't counted.
Yeah.
Lo and behold,
Yeah.
I won by 11 votes. Guess how many how many write-in ballots they found for Blazinski? 11.
Yeah.
So now what was it? A tie.
Yeah.
So we had to do it
Well, no.
all over again.
What it did was drop you from above a 50% threshold.
Right.
That would you win right
Right,
off.
I was
So there
I was
no-
at 50% plus 11
Right.
votes.
You, in other words, Blazinski did to you what Shuey did to Rahm, forced him into a runoff.
Absolutely, he forced me into a runoff. But Chewy did it on the up and up. This was not on the up and up.
Well, that's gracious of you to say so.
So, my point being, so then we go, but can I just say one thing? It was beautiful because even more people came out to vote.
Yeah.
You know, today, I want people in the audience, you go and check the last results for your alderman. Here on the Northwest side, the 33rd, the 26th, it's like 4,000 to 2,000. You know how many votes it was in 1986? It was like 9,000 to 8,000 for the loser. I mean, people voted. And they voted because they believed in Harold Washington. And they believed in his message of change and reform and that things were going to be different in the city and that those who were on the outside were going to be in finally. But we weren't going to take those that were in and throw them out. We were going to have parity and equality. And so people voted and participated.
Yeah, they
But
did.
you also had strong ward organizations, right? What you're describing is like the machine ward organizations, obviously the Rostenkowski organization. These people literally controlled whether you got garbage cans.
Absolutely.
And then you had independent upstart organizations like the one you were describing, the one you helped form. So you really had a lot of people who were very, very organized. And now I think a lot of elections are done, like you said, through social media and other
Yeah,
platforms,
absolutely.
which are effective on one level, but they don't necessarily have that that person-to-person
They
kind of power.
they don't, and back then we really strived immediately after to show that there would be changes. And one of the first things I wanted to do was, especially in Wicker Park, where it was less Latino and much more white in terms of the voting population there. I mean, I worked really, really hard to make sure that when I got elected, that I didn't just take all of the new sidewalks and improvements and energy, right? And put it in only one part of the ward. Because that wasn't the way Harold Washington wanted it done. And when we even approved the general obligation bond, Ed Verdoliak and Paczynski and their wards
They
got
it.
just as much as a black or a Latino ward.
Yeah.
So it was really fairness.
Yeah, yeah.
Even in victory, it wasn't like to the victor goes the
Much more
spoils.
fair than Rahm Emanuel.
Well, I would say fairer than anything I have seen since.
Yeah.
How's that? Fairer than anything I've seen since.
Yeah.
Okay, well let's move forward a little bit.
Okay.
Because you're alderman, and one of the first. I mean, you made a name for yourself fairly quickly, and Harold Washington, of course, was dead within a year and a half of you being elected, right?
November.
Right. And so moving forward, along comes Rich Daley back on the scene, running for mayor, wins in 1989, and you made a deal with the new mayor, right? And a lot of people said, well, you turned your back on the old coalition and stuff. Tell us about that. How did that come about? Why did you do it?
It was not difficult because, number one, Tim Evans, if you recall, was the chosen, anointed candidate to fill the shoes, the unfillable shoes of Harold Washington. And one of the things you need to understand about the Harold Washington Coalition, that the Harold Washington Coalition was together because there was Harold Washington. It wasn't as though there was this platform or this ideological commitment to a certain set of principles that you didn't sign up for a program and a platform of a party. It was really about Harold Washington. He was really mystical and magical. And I know that for people in this room that never met him and were never in a room with him, it was really, and he had that magic and that ability to keep us together. And so once he died, I tried. I voted for Tim Evans that night. But really the African Americans divided themselves by some of them deciding to go with Sawyer and some of them deciding to go with Evans. So the division among the African American community didn't happen with my blessing or my participation. They did that the night they elected Eugene Sawyer, mayor of the city of Chicago.
In retrospect, I hear what you're saying, and this is ancient history, which I don't know how many people are even alive for that, except for you and me.
I understand.
But
it's highly relevant.
It is highly. It's not highly irrelevant. It's highly relevant. You're right, because that split that you're describing in one way or another is still very much a part of Chicago politics and is the reason Daley won for 20-odd years. And the current mayor, whose name I can't remember at the moment, has been, he's been exploiting sort of the same kind of split. So in retrospect, shouldn't everybody in the Harold Washington Coalition have gotten behind Gene Sawyer back in '89 as opposed to keeping this fight going on?
But they didn't. Many said that they would simply wait for the runoff and wait for Tim Evans. So they did not help Eugene Sawyer. I saw that. So what they said to me was, guess what? You remember how Hines and Verdoliak were the third-party candidate? So we're going to have two African-American chances at being the... And I said, wait a minute. Describe to me why that's different than first Jane Byrne. Harold White has to take on Jane Byrne, and then he has to take on Hines. It's the same thing. I thought we're in the I just got elected Democratic committeeman in '88. I just took on Rostenkowski because he didn't support the Democratic nominee in '83. So I said to myself, we should be in the Democratic Party, and we should support the Democratic nominee, and I can't support Eugene Sawyer. So I sat down with Rich Daley. And we talked about the 26th Ward, and we talked about the city of Chicago, and I made an agreement to support his candidacy. Now, I will say this. Carol Mosley Braun followed me in supporting him. Miguel del Valle decided that he wanted to be clerk one day. I guess, he decided, the pension is better as clerk than it is as a state senator. I'm not begrudging him his extra pension. And probably gets one from the state and the city. Now, that's good. But my point is, here's my point. My point is, he ran with... It wasn't because I told him to do it. It wasn't because I had some mystical power over him.
You're talking about Miguel. Now you
Miguel
fast
del
forward
Valle,
to 19.
right? Miguel del Valle.
What year was this?
Runs with Rich Daley.
Yeah.
So
Undercutting
please,
your mayoral
if
campaign.
we're going to talk about my participation, there's lots of company.
So in other words,
sure
what you're saying is
we don't have the whole company up here though. We got you.
I
got it. All right.
No, but you're doing a variation of what the great Bill Henry. May he rest in peace.
Coca-Cola. Bill Henry.
Yeah, another.
So Cola.
Yeah, So Cola, right. Very good memory. Another old friend of mine. 24th Ward Alderman said when he was accused of making deals, he said we was all making deals. So you're saying that essentially everybody makes their deals in Chicago?
No. What I'm saying is the following. I sat down with the mayor, with the state's attorney, Richard Daley. Right. I had two alternatives. I had Richard Daley, and I had Eugene Sawyer. And I didn't support Eugene Sawyer that first night. He was put in there by Ed Verdoliak and by everything. Yeah. And so I said, you know what? Right.
And by Richard Mell, who sat in that very seat at one point.
So I sat down, and here's the way I look at it. I look at it that we got more city council seats. So when I sat down with Rich Daley, I still remember 89. And I said, he was the state's attorney. I said, Harold Washington, we had one commissioner, Latino commissioner, right? And I said, I want to make sure there's 4 when you're mayor of the city of Chicago. Well, actually, we got 6 when you include the deputy mayor for education, Lourdes Monteagudo.
So memory.
I do remember because I sat down with them. I said, I want to make sure the library gets built. I want to make sure the vocational training. So yeah, there's a deal, but it's a deal for what? To line your own pocket? Or to enrich a community with educational resources that they deserve. Okay. So you can use your power for a lot of different things, for yourself personally, or for a community that elected you. I'll tell you what.
You also helped your career. I mean,
well, no, but
from there you became the congressman.
If you make smart decisions and the community prospers, they usually vote for you.
No, but you were essentially, they drew a congressional district for you and then slated you to run for the Congress, and then when Mel wanted to run, Daley's brother kept him out from running so that you wouldn't have Mel's opposition, which to this day we don't know who would have won that race.
Can I say one thing? What? Say one thing. That's a bit simplistic.
Which part?
It's simplistic. I was in 92. The alderman of the 26th ward and the committeeman of the 26th ward, and I was going to run for Congress. In the newly created district, which the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund went to court and sued in order to create under the Civil Rights Act.
That is correct.
Okay, and the Voting Rights Act. So let's remember we're in federal court suing for this Congress. So I don't have all of this magic, but they're going to create a congressional district.
That was created after the redistricting had already occurred.
Yes,
once more an amendment of the.
So they created and I run, and it was Juan Solis runs, and Dick Mell said he was going to run, and I run. Did I have the endorsement of Rich Daley, the mayor of the city of Chicago? Yes, but I just want, because sometimes the audience will say, "Oh, no." So now let's just go forward. It is June of '93, right? And Ben's correct. Harold Washington, they all. What's the first decision I have to make? I have to vote against the North American Free Trade Agreement because it just disgusted me that we would take workers and the Congress of the United States would make workers secondary to what our legislative process. Workers in Mexico and workers in the United States. Now, Ben, who was the cheerleader?
Bill Daley.
Bill Daley, the one that you just said made it happen for me.
He did make
so
it
within
happen for you.
6 months. No, that's what.
Wait,
but I'm following your point.
But your point's well taken.
But I'm following your point. So within 6 months, I have to say to Mayor Daley, to his brother, and to John Schmidt, who were my co-chairman of my campaign, and raised hundreds of thousands of dollars so I could successfully run for Congress. I'm not voting for the North American Free Trade Agreement. So understand.
How did they react to that?
Well, they ran the alderman of the 12th ward against me, remember? But he got indicted like a month before. It's true. And then, so Juan Solis ran against me. Here's my point. My point is, I went to Congress. I quit and resigned as Democratic committeeman of the 26th ward on January 3rd, 1993. How do I know that? Because that's the day I got sworn in to Congress. I wanted to leave the committeemen, the politics, that part, the fundraising part that you do, and leave that to other people to do. I wanted to go to Congress because I really wanted to. I had a conversation in 85 with Miguel del Valle. And I said, Miguel, you should run in the 31st ward and I'll run in the 26th ward and we'll go to the city council. Miguel del Valle, who became state senator and city clerk and ran for mayor. And so Miguel said to me, he says, but the city council, it's about garbage and rats. You know, it's about, you know, all these little things. I want to go to Springfield where it's about legislation. And I said, and he did. And he went. And then he went. And then we forgot he almost got elected. He went down to Springfield. Remember, it was
he got elected at the same time that
same day he won his nomination, the same day I did. But the city council was where I wanted to be. But I also wanted to be able to one day go to the Congress of the United States.
You can't want to stay in the city council for too long.
Well, I said in 1991,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you can find this in the Chicago Tribune, right?
Okay.
When I was interviewed,
Yeah.
I made sure. So they said, well, you're running against, they do those reviews. I said,
Okay.
this will be my last term in the Chicago City Council. So I knew that 95 would be it for me.
when you think about the city that you left, and the city that was under Harold Washington, and the city that was under Mayor Daley, you have to think we regressed as a city. Don't you? When you look back, I mean, sort of like, I'm not blaming you for the regression. I'm just saying that politically, everything, idealistically, everything that you believed in, everything that motivated you to run back in 1983 or 4, you have to admit that we regressed significantly.
It is different. It is very,
won't buy
very
the word
different.
regress?
No, it's just
Different is the word
let
you're
me
gonna
just.
use?
It's different. It isn't as goal driven, as idealistic as maybe it should be. Our political process. I think that I think our neighborhoods. I mean, I see the red light cameras, and sometimes I feel like it's this George Orwellian city that we live in, because there seems to be a camera everywhere, and that kind of taxing because you were going 32 miles where it's 30, and there's a camera and the red lights, and now it costs $5 when you want to go to the barber to put money in the machine.
Yeah.
It is a different city of Chicago, and I see a new downtown. So there's a downtown. So I see a city of Chicago where, I'll make it very simplistic for you. I live in Portage Park. So Logan Square, Portage Park, those neighborhoods. And then you have downtown, and then you have stark poverty in the city of Chicago. I mean, just deserts with no banks, no pharmacies, no stores, and utter hopelessness. And so do I think we can do better? And that maybe instead of talking about building Lucas's museum, we can talk about building more housing, affordable housing.
Well, apparently
in
you
the
don't have to
inner
worry
city.
about that anymore.
Well-
So let's move forward a little bit on the timeline. 2006, 2005, 2006, 2007. Mayor Daley is looking to be in some real political trouble. The feds are sniffing around. You have the hired truck scandal. You have the city hiring scandal. And at the time, I believe, you and your fellow congressman at the time, Jesse Jackson Jr., were contemplating a run against Mayor Daley.
Yes, we were.
What happened to change your mind against running? Because reportedly you were, I know Junior was putting together at least some sort of framework for a potential campaign before he bowed out. Why didn't you go forward? And was it true that the mayor came back with dirt on you? Or how did you, what made you stay out of that race?
Number one, I wanted to give Miguel Del Valle an opportunity to leave Springfield and become city clerk. Because he had been down there so long.
Yeah, okay. It's
And
Miguel's fault.
It's got to be somebody's fault other than mine.
Yeah.
But just a little levity. I figured we could use that here in this program here. But so he became his running mate for.
That's correct.
I mean, when the mayor saw Luis Gutiérrez coming,
Yes.
he didn't have the dirt.
Correct.
He said, "Let me find another
Puerto
Puerto
Rican,
Rican
right,
to run
yeah,
with me." The old divide and conquer.
Right.
So it's okay. But here's fundamentally why I made the decision. In 2004, we finally submitted in Congress the first bicameral immigration reform bill. It was Kennedy in the Senate and Gutiérrez in the House, right? In 2005, it was McCain and Kennedy and Congressman Flake, now Senator Flake and I, in the House. So we had comprehensive immigration reform. Remember in 2007, we finally got a vote in the Senate on immigration reform. Hillary Clinton voted for it. Bernie Sanders went on Lou Dobbs to brag why he voted against immigration reform. Now, these are all things that happen.
Yeah.
So I said to myself, why did I go to Congress? To use it as a stepping stone to go to mayor of the city
Hall.
of Chicago? No. I said, I'm on the verge. And then I'm watching. I think I made exactly the right decision to stay focused on my legislative priorities in Washington, D.C., and all the work that I had built upon.
Well, if Miguel hadn't At the time I remember interviewing you, we had long conversations about this. Essentially, Daley pulled a slick move. I got to give him credit for it. He used Miguel del Valle, your old ally, to sort of cut you off at the knees. And if it didn't abort your mayoral campaign, it came close.
Ben? I'm gonna tell you. I came here because we're old friends, and there's no reason to. I'm telling you, I made a decision. I made the right decision, and that was to stay faithful to a cause and to a purpose. And I think I made the right decision to stay in Congress.
Fair enough. Let me ask you this, though. Why did Mayor Daley, whom you had endorsed and been allied with to that point, why did he need opposition at that point? I mean, was it just that he was politically weak, or was there something fundamentally wrong with the way he was governing the city that moved you to contemplate that?
You know, I got to tell you, ever since I helped Harold Washington become mayor of the city of Chicago, it was always tempting to come back. And I mean, I was born in 1953 in the city of Chicago, so I'm 62 years old. This is my city. For those who recently arrived, welcome. For those of us that were born here, this is a beautiful place. I love the city of Chicago. One day, you know, I hope to retire here in the city of Chicago. This is my city. I was born here in Lincoln Park, just across the way, when the coffee wasn't quite as expensive as it is today. It was, you know, so I grew up in a beautiful city of Chicago with lots happening. And so in 1969, my parents finally their dream of moving back to Puerto Rico. But, you know, my dad, so from my living room, you know, I still remember when Martin Luther King was murdered. And I still remember the patrolling of the National Guard. And I still remember North Avenue being burned down, all of the stores on North Avenue being burned down. I remember a lot about the city of Chicago. And I said to myself, wow, I grew up in a city where, like, I was too Puerto Rican to be American, right? So I was called a lot of things that we won't repeat here today because this isn't the that conference of the journalists in Washington, D.C., where they use all kind of racial epithets to describe people. We're not going to do that here tonight. But my point being that, so I'm a Puerto Rican kid, right? Grown up in the city of Chicago. My dad drives a cab, which Ralph Stankowski made lots of fun of.
Yes, he did.
And my mom worked in a factory, right? But they did good. That's why I always look at the educational system and I say, you know, we've got to figure out how we have alternatives. Because I got to tell you, public education helped me a lot.
Wait, now.
But let me just finish. But in 6th grade, had it not been for the nuns at St. Michael's, they straightened me out. 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, they straightened me out.
All right, listen. So the state of Chicago. The city that you love. And essentially, at least you're consistent when you have these explanations that there's sort of like a division between wanting to achieve goals on a national level, like immigration reform, and wanting to run for mayor of the town that you love and that you grew up in, which is the singular most important position in the city of Chicago. Sure. So you didn't run in 2011. Rahm Emanuel ran. You didn't support Rahm.
I did, and I did everything I could to defeat him.
Yes, I thank you for doing that. So
I did a really good job.
Okay, yeah. Well, we couldn't quite get to that runoff.
I understand that.
Okay.
I understand that.
And
but Gary Chico got to 23%
Yeah,
without being able to speak Spanish.
Yeah, and I voted
pretty
for
good.
I voted for your old buddy Del Valle.
Okay,
All
Del Valle. That was a good pick.
So, what happened between 2011? When you were passionately for somebody other than Rahm and very critical of Rahm, what happened between 2011 and 2015 to get you to go to support Rahm when your support could have put Chewy over?
And you didn't just support Rahm, you were his campaign co-chair and one of his surrogates.
Well, being campaign co-chair and surrogate, it's kind of synonymous, right?
We're piling it on.
Yeah, I'm underscoring the point.
Yeah, let's underscore the point, right? Good reporting. So, in 2008, in 2007, I had a conversation with the junior senator from the state of Illinois, Barack Obama. He said to me, Luis, I'm going on vacation to, everybody knows, Hawaii, because that's where he vacations. I'm going, it's Christmas, I'm going there, right? And when I come back, I'm going to decide whether I run for president of the United States, right? This is 2006, the Christmas of 2006. Will you be with me if I decide? And you know what I said to him? I said, you know what's important to me, Barack? I could call him, he wasn't Mr. President then, so I'm putting everything in context. I said, Barack, well, you know what's important to me? He said, immigration reform. He says, we're going to get it done the first year of my administration. No, I'm just letting you know what he said. And I said, favorite son, you know? I thought about Harold Washington. He didn't have a chance. Maybe, you know, this guy has a chance. Let's look beyond not having a chance, right? And because we did it in '83, we could do it again. So I campaigned for him. I was a surrogate for him all over. He didn't give me a fancy title like, you know, national co-chairman or any of that. I could have negotiated one, but that wasn't that good.
Negotiate anything.
I could negotiate that thing, but I didn't. So I campaigned for him, and then the very first year of his administration, I and 100 activists from across the country, immigration activists from across the country, are swept up in an arrest condemning his immigration policies as inhumane. That was not easy, but I had to take on the president. In 2011, I was arrested once again because now he has deported more people than George Bush, than Bill Clinton. He is deporter-in-chief. And this is the guy that promised me. So I said to myself, well, this guy was his chief of staff. And Ram and I sat down, and here's what we talked about. How is it we get immigration policy passed? And I thought to myself,
Wait,
that's
you
what,
sat down and talked with him when he was the chief of staff? You had this
no,
conversation? This
when
is
it was
afterwards?
after. He just won his election. I did everything I could to stop him.
So were you doing everything you could to stop him in 2011 because you blamed him for President Obama's immigration policies?
Because I thought that Rahm Emanuel, a lot of it had to do with immigration. Yeah. And a lot of it had to do with, I thought that Gary Chico would just do a better job. And I wanted a spirited campaign.
Personal? Was there something about Rahm Emanuel that?
It wasn't personal. I've never tried to make it personal with people. I'm older. I'm 62 years old, so I rarely make things personal about them. Look, you and I are sitting here together at this table. If it was personal, you know,
it would have been,
come on.
We've had our ups and downs.
We've had our ups and downs. It isn't like Ben Javarsky writes nice things about me, and it's okay. It's okay. No, because I think this is an important conversation that we should have. But so we sat down. Can I just say, we got city colleges, and we made sure that even undocumented youth that graduate from our public school can have their first 2 years of college free, even if you're undocumented. That is unprecedented in any city college system anywhere in the United States of America. We took the executive order of Harold Washington that said we wouldn't cooperate with immigration. Nobody, the police, the fire, anybody would cooperate with immigration, with ICE, given the deportation. We made that a statute, right? We made immigration and we made citizenship something that you could go to any library in the city of Chicago. We did a lot of work, and most importantly, he and I went down together and we sat down with the Secretary of Homeland Security, Jay Johnson, and we sat down with him and he set up the meetings and we talked about what the executive orders would look like. And we worked together to frame those executive orders. Having said that, everybody realizes that 2 weeks ago we were in the Supreme Court on the very executive orders that can free 4 million undocumented workers in the United States, 4 million people who can be free from deportation and finally get a legal status in the United States. And I was excited for the 4 million and the work that we were going to do. I was also excited because, you know, it was, you know, Sonia Sotomayor was there. And I thought to myself, wow, 2 Puerto Ricans in the Supreme Court chamber, right? One of them listening and deciding, and the other one listening and hoping she decides, right? I said, this is our new West Side Story, right? It's not the same one, Maria, and you're looking for her. No, but it demonstrates what, if you look at it from my perspective, that it isn't all just blowing smoke right?
So you're
It
saying there's
it
significant
really
things
can
that
be.
Rahm
You really
Emanuel-
can make a difference in America. You really can contribute to changing.
So
And
you're saying-
yeah. So you're saying Rahm stepped up on this issue because
did.
he was. I mean, it came out in this release of records from the Clinton administration era that he was actually an opponent. He's one of the people who thwarted your efforts at immigration reform in the 90s, right?
Okay.
So you felt like he'd come around enough and really, in a genuine
But
way.
remember one thing, and this is why I'm going to go back to 2007. In 2007, I was still working on building. Democrats were against immigration reform. They used to look at me and say, they weren't like supporting me. In 2004, when Kennedy and I introduced the immigration bill, only 2 senators co-sponsored Kennedy immigration bill, two Democratic senators. One was Feingold, right? And the other one was Hillary Clinton. Those were the only 2 people that endorsed the immigration bill. In the House, it was the Hispanic Congressional Caucus. So remember that we're growing. In 2007, that vote that I referred to, Bernie Sanders actually did go, the progressive actually did go on Lou Dobbs. And he connected the hatred for Wall Street, right? The Lou Dobbs theory, right? Together with, the middle class is going to be destroyed. I'm like, what happened to the farm workers that every day work so hard to bring us our fruit and our vegetable and the food to our table? What happened to them? So here's my point. I think it's important to understand that you need to build, right, within the So there's lots of Democrats like Mayor Rahm Emanuel. Most Democrats have Rahm Emanuel, including Barack Obama, who deports more people than anyone prior to him. So understand, if my litmus test is to say, well, they were anti-immigrant, I guess I'll never talk to them. I have nobody to talk to.
Yeah.
It's the way it was.
So-
Okay, well, all right. Now let's fast forward a little bit. Rahm, we all know this crowd wasn't too happy about it, but Rahm survived the election, gets reelected. Last fall, after the release of the Laquan McDonald videotape, you withdrew your support for State's Attorney Anita Alvarez.
I did.
And I wrote, and many other people wrote stories about the emails that the Rahm Emanuel administration, people in his administration, went back and forth communicating about the release of that video and the aftermath. And they were freaking out, and not in a good way, when you withdrew your support for Anita Alvarez. They thought that you were also going to be coming out against the mayor. And then a phone call was arranged between the mayor and you, and next thing we know, we see in these emails, staffers from your office, from the mayor's office saying, they just had a great conversation, it's all good, we're cool. What happened there? Why did you withdraw your support for Alvarez but stand by the mayor ultimately? And what can you tell us about that conversation?
Number one, you're making it sound like the mayor and I having a conversation is some unique event. It's not.
But this was a
I
pretty
can speak-
important
but
time.
that's why
the timing
the mayor and
here.
I we speak to each other. That doesn't take a special arrangement.
Do you talk on the
for
phone?
mayor. I call him on his phone.
Who
He
actually
calls us-
listens in that conversation?
Well,
I'm teasing you, but no, seriously. Do you guys talk or do you text or how do you do it?
We might even text one another, But the fact is that, look, it's silly and it's sheer stupidity to think that a U.S. congressman, 24-year veteran, I am the dean of the Illinois delegation, right? The senior member of the Illinois delegation. I know that might come surprise to some people. That I'm not going to talk to the mayor of the city of Chicago about the mayor when I see it in this crisis. Of course we're going to talk. That my staff and their staff have a conversation, that's what staffers do. They have conversations. They're always trying to resolve problems between bosses. Sometimes problems that don't even exist, right? They do. That's what staffers do. You try to call. You know what a chief of staff is? A gatekeeper. Somebody who keeps people away. So if you've worked in an administration, you will understand that. So having said that, look, I made this decision. I supported Anita Alvarez when she first ran. Anita Alvarez, I believe, betrayed her oath of office when for 14 months she hid that videotape of the Laquan McDonald murder. And when I saw that, I said, I sent her a beautiful mail and I said, Anita, I'm so proud of you. I've always used you as a person that, for Latinas, especially Latinas, right? To look up to and to be able to, but you let us down. And I didn't say, so Jesus and Garcia and others said she should resign, if you remember, right? I didn't ask for a resignation. I didn't believe that. Here's what I thought. I thought the way you resolve this is in an election, right? So I endorsed Kim Foxx, right? And I was happy to endorse Kim Foxx because I thought we needed a dramatic change when I saw what she did. And, I'm going to make a decision in the next election about who it is I'm going to support, and we'll have a conversation then. But that's what I tried to do. I tried to take it one election after the next election. This was an election. Rahm Emanuel was not on the ballot. Anita Hill was. Bernie Sanders did a good job of putting him on the ballot. I mean, Alvarez, putting him on the ballot and making it a referendum about him, but he wasn't. And so all I'm going to say is I was one of the first to call upon the federal government and the Justice Department to investigate the city of Chicago, and I did that by myself. So, look, I have not only done that, but it's been reported, not wide, because things are not widely reported when you're a member of Congress, right? You're not in the city council. So, nobody wants to write about what you have to say, the latest TIF controversy, right? It's about, it's only Planned Parenthood and whether women are going to have their reproductive rights or we're going to have gay marriage in this country, guns and, their proliferation. We're going to control that. That's what we do in Congress. Yeah. So we don't get covered usually by the media.
No.
So
media never covers Congress. Yeah.
They really do. No, they seriously rarely do.
But get to your point.
My point is this, Ben. My point is this, that if you look at it, I will make a decision on that. But I've asked for an investigation into it. Let's wait for the investigation.
So you didn't go easy on the Emanuel administration in this. That's what you're saying. You didn't just give them a pass on it.
Here's what I did. I called upon the Justice Department to investigate, and I've written subsequent letters with other members of Congress, because here's how I think the Justice Department has let us down in this whole investigation, and the Attorney General specifically, how Loretta Lynch has let us down. She should be in every neighborhood of the city of Chicago. She comes to the city, and she comes to City Hall to the 5th floor and comes and meets. That's not the place we need her to meet. We need her to meet in every neighborhood and to listen to people. When I have young Latino and African-American men that I meet with say that they have learned how to negotiate with the police, when they tell me about the fear, that I said, we're never going to stop the gangbangers and the drug dealers and the villains if our youth, if there's such a divide between the Chicago Police Department and the youth of the city of Chicago. I see that each and every day as I visit high schools. And so I said to myself, that's where we should be. We should be rebuilding that, because I got to tell you something. Until you feel like that cop's your friend, your ally, right? And somebody that's on your side, and you're a young black kid on the west side or the south side, or a Latino, the city of Chicago is not going to prosper.
Well, how's Mayor Emanuel doing? How's he doing at this point in time, a few months later, and what else should he be doing? I mean, what's your sort of diagnosis of the city
I think he should do more, but I think he should do more. The new superintendent, when you take a superintendent that's part of the police department and says, I've never seen police abuse, it's kind of tough. Yeah. You've never seen it? Really? All you have to do is come to Humboldt Park, and I'll give you 100 people that'll give you 100 different instances. If you've never seen it, and you're a 25-year veteran, and now you're in charge, I imagine there's a few police officers that were probably pretty happy with having that. So I think we really need to have it. And I just want to say, because I think it's important, not only because I have family members that are Chicago cops, but because I think there are a lot of great, decent. What I would do right now is I would train and retrain and re-educate the Chicago Police Department to make different. If a Chicago cop says to a young kid in the inner city, what are you reading? When he sees them at a hot dog, what are you reading? And shows a little interest in him and what he's reading and what he cares about, let me tell you, he's going to change that youth and that youth's interpretation. So I know it's a small experiment, but we need to have these experiments flourish throughout the city of Chicago so that cops should be mentors to our youth, not somebody that simply is there to harass them and put them up against the wall and shoot their pistols, 16 in 15 seconds. I mean, everybody has seen this, and we need to change that. So I think the mayor should focus on the police department and building the rapport that's needed between our neighborhoods. Because downtown, I bet you people get along just fine, and I bet you but it's in the inner city that we need to do this.
When you think about the Laquan McDonald video being suppressed, and all that symbolizes about what was happening in Mayor Rahm's police department for the last 4 years, do you have any regrets for having endorsed Mayor Rahm?
Look, I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to wait. There are 2.5 years left, 3 years left in his administration.
Pending investigation.
Yeah, pending investigation. I feel like I feel like I'm having the same kind of thing with good old Cruz and the Trump supporters yesterday. Look, there's going to be an investigation. We're going to finish this investigation. And I have to say this. The mayor of the city of Chicago, no mayor has ever released a videotape. It just hasn't happened. It is the course. I think we need to change that, and we are changing that so that they are released quickly, because I think it's a detriment to the faith and reliability we need to have in those that govern us.
So are you not running for mayor? Are you thinking about it? Is it on the table?
So you should never say never, right? But I will today. Here's what I'd like to do. I was talking to Ben earlier. There are 12 million undocumented people in this country. And apart from the 12 million undocumented, there are millions of American citizens that are married to them. They're their cousins. They're their uncles. They're their wives. We need to fix our broken immigration system, because every one of us in this room, we enjoy the fruit of their exploited labor. We do. Every one of us does. And I think it's time to have comprehensive immigration reform. That's what I have committed and dedicated my life to. Some people may not like the decisions that I've made in terms of who I've supported and who I've been with, but my focus has been there. And if you go to the immigrant community, you will find. So I'm happy this Friday, I won't be in Chicago. I will be addressing the United Farm Workers. I will go out to, and not LA, because that's not where the farm workers are at. But I will be every 4 years, and they've asked me to be their keynote speaker. To me, that gives me really, really deep satisfaction that I'm doing the right thing. I'm going to continue to work. We can do $4 million through the executive action. I'm happy that I'm not having to get arrested outside. President Obama kept saying, I can't do this. I told Ben one day, I went into the White House, into the Roosevelt room with a dozen other colleagues. And before we started the meeting with President Obama, he said, I have something I'd like to say before we start this meeting. Luis, what you said in getting arrested outside was wrong, he told me, in front of everybody. You think it's easy to go into the White House and have the president say that kind of thing in front of your colleagues? And I said, now, did I run back when he made the decision that he said he couldn't? No, he said he couldn't do it. Yeah. And then he did what he said he couldn't do. Did I go back and said, I told you so? No.
You should have.
No, but here's my point. My point is that, look, the Congress we cannot all be everything you want us to be. We cannot. You have to pick and choose priorities and be focused on those priorities. I don't want to be a general practitioner in the Congress of the United States. I want to get something done. And I think it is a noble cause in the United States of America, a nation built on immigrants that has a broken immigration system, to fix it.
All right.
All right.
Let's have some questions.
Questions from the audience.
Given the crisis, financial crisis going on in Puerto Rico, what is the future of Puerto Rico? What should it be? Independent, statehood, the status quo?
First of all, we need to give Puerto Rico the ability and the tools so that it can take the talent that it has and prosper and grow. So my dad in 1950 would have gone to jail for saying what the Congress of the United States today admits, and that is that Puerto Rico is a colony of the United States of America. And let me explain that. Puerto Rico is under the territorial clause of the Constitution of the United States, and you just go look it up when you leave, okay? You know what it means? That Puerto Rico is property of the United States of America. It says the Supreme Court has said that under the territorial clause, Puerto Rico is not a part of, but belongs to the United States of America. And I see a direct correlation between what the United States is doing to the people of Puerto Rico and what the British did to the Irish during the famine in the 1840s. They said, yes, you're our subjects, but we're not going to come to your aid. That's a shameful act. They are American citizens. Yes, we are your property. Technically, legally, that is true. It's a colony of the United States. I went down to the House floor and I said, free Puerto Rico. I think the mic.
Your mic.
Oh.
The mic keeps cutting out. So
here you go.
This one?
Your mic, yeah.
I went down to the House floor and I said, free Puerto Rico. For those who have been to the beautiful island of Puerto Rico, they know that off of the East Coast, the wind flows, right? 365 days of the year. Why aren't we capturing that energy? Why are we using fossil fuels to have an electricity system on an island of Puerto Rico? We should be looking. So I say to the Congress, allow the people of Puerto Rico to be free and create their own energy. It's a tropical island. Why is it that we're bringing in vegetables and oranges and, yes, bananas and pineapples? They're being imported. Why are we investing in the agriculture of Puerto Rico? It's a tropical island. Why aren't we investing so that American corporations come to Puerto Rico and invest and use the talent? Puerto Rico loses a doctor every week. A doctor leaves Puerto Rico. You know, all of that talent, 84,000 people left the island of Puerto Rico. It's the same as when my mom and dad left in 1950. The problem is my mom and dad, they had a 9th and a 6th grade education. Now we're losing all of our wonderful, talented people that are creating jobs. Where's our tax base going? So I say free Puerto Rico, allow it to go out into the world, into the economic world, and bring people in that will invest. And lastly, you know, the U.S. Merchant Marines is the most expensive way to transport your goods on the water. But the people of Puerto Rico, because of the Jones Act, must use, right, U.S. chartered and flagged under the Merchant Marines. That cost the people of Puerto Rico $400 million. And now they want to take the island of Vieques. Now, I was arrested twice walking in, and I have, with my friends and others, we went there to free that island of the bombing of the U.S. Navy after 40 years. And I went there in civil disobedience once. And, you know, the third time you wouldn't have seen me because the judge was very clear when he put me on probation for a year after being found guilty of trespassing on federal property. So, and now they're going to transfer that island and just allow people to come and develop it and sell it off in order to pay what? The hedge funds? In order to pay Wall Street? I say put the people of Puerto Rico first and not the vulture capitalists on Wall Street.
By the way, I would say the same thing about Chicago under Mayor Rahm.
The question is, what about the Senate? You've said here never to running for mayor because of your focus on immigration reform. What if Senator Durbin retires and that seat, that opportunity opened up? Would you think about that?
Again, you know, Ben and I had a good, I'm sorry, Ben, the mic doesn't work. And you don't get to, like, cut me at the end. You know, what is this? They get a question.
We can take care of that problem, too.
Yeah. But on a serious note, look, here's what I want to do. And I want to go, return, get elected in November, re-elected in November, go back. I think we have a really good chance, and I'm going to campaign hard across this country, getting Latinos to come out to vote so we can take back the Senate. I think we have a really, really good chance of taking back the Senate. The Senate's going to be particularly important because of the Supreme Court. So you elect a Democrat as president, that Supreme Court nomination is going to be critically important. And I think we have a really, really good chance. I think we're going to win Illinois. Kirk is done. Tammy Duckworth, as far as she's going to be the next U.S. Senator from the state of Illinois. And we're going to go there on a progressive agenda. I don't know about the House. We might have a chance. People tend to think that Trump is actually going to help. Some people think. I don't see that. I see that actually the opposite. A lot of people don't understand and they underestimate the immigrant and Latino community. 1 million Latinos reach the age of 18 every year. 1 million. 1 million. And I know some people are saying, well, how many got papers? I'm only counting the ones that are citizens of the United States of America. 1 million. And you know how they're coming into this political system? 70% of them are Mexican origin. How do you think they feel when they're called rapists and murderers and drug dealers? Let me tell you, they're registering to vote in unprecedented numbers, and they're going to vote in this election.
So you're saying the Democrats can take the House? Is that what you're saying?
I think we've got a shot, but I really believe we can take the Senate. I really believe we're going to have the White House. And I think if they still control the House of Representatives, we're going to be able to get comprehensive immigration reform bill. And let me say it to everybody here and everybody that you'll rebroadcast it. We signed a comprehensive immigration bill in the House of Representatives. The president signs it. I have absolutely no reason to return to the Congress of the United States. I will feel that I have accomplished my goal. And you can print it, you can edit, you can videotape it, so that they can use it against me should I decide to change my mind.
They will, too.
Because guess what? Yeah. I won't. It is the sole purpose that drives me every day to go to the Congress of the United States. I want to get it done.
Then you can run for mayor.
Yeah.
We definitely need to restructure and end the code of silence that exists. Because the police officer that murdered Laquan McDonald, he's responsible. But so were all of those other cops that signed those phony reports that said that what he did isn't what he did. I lived right here on Wabansia and Winchester, right on the corner. My daughter, the house on the corner was my home before I moved to Portage Park. This was my congressional district once upon a time. And my daughter, she came back from school one day, and the police officers, they put her up against the car. They registered her. They searched her car, and they said, what are you doing in this neighborhood? Because they didn't feel that my daughter, being Puerto Rican, should be in this neighborhood because it wasn't a neighborhood for young Puerto Rican girls to be in. And you know, so all I'm trying to say to you is that there is a difference in terms of what I've been able to see about how the Chicago Police Department operates in the inner city, in communities of color, and in Portage Park, where I live, which is an integrated community, but it isn't. There is a difference. And I want them to treat us all, regardless of the color of our skin or our ethnicity or nationality, the same way, with common decency.
The question was, why did you support Dick Bell for committeeman of the 33rd Ward in this last election?
In this last election.
Yeah.
Because he asked me to.
Is that the only reason?
Yeah. Was there, you have another one?
Well, I mean...
Why didn't you support the best candidate?
Well, because Dick Melton, well, the only person that talked to me was Dick Melton. I'm going to tell you something.
If the other candidate was spoken to, you would have supported the other candidate?
Who knows? But that conversation never took place. That's why I resigned as committeeman, because of exactly these things. Because I think that a lot of the local things about who you're for committeeman and for things that aren't very relevant. I assure you, whoever the committeeman of the 33rd Ward is today and what he does as committeeman of the 33rd Ward will not be super big in terms of your life or anybody's lives here, okay? Yet, we make such a big deal about it. Look, I went to Congress and I get elected so I can stand with Planned Parenthood. That's why I do it. In 1996, it wasn't easy. No, but let me finish. No, Ben,
but it does matter.
But you can't keep stopping me when I'm answering a question.
No, but it does matter to people. That local politics does matter.
It does matter.
It mattered to you when you ran against Rosenkowski.
It does matter.
You wanted people to support you.
But I was running for committeeman and for alderman.
Yeah, but you ran against Rosenkowski in 1984. You weren't running for alderman. It mattered to you.
Well, I was running for committeeman. I'm just
saying, it matters to him that...
It does matter to him, but here's my point. Yeah. Here's my point. Now, I hope I get a chance to... When you invited me here, we're still friends, right? This is the way I see things. Now, if you want me here to come to express things that are not, I didn't come here to please everybody in this audience. Do you think I thought everybody in this room were gun-ho Luis Gutiérrez supporters? No. But I think this is part of democracy. in order to be able to have this kind of conversation. Otherwise, I can find a group of people, fill the room up, and they could be cheering me up and down. That's not what this is about. It's about having, so when you ask me a question, I'm going to give you an honest answer. But I'm going to tell you something. And Ben, I think I should be allowed the opportunity to talk about who I am, because you want to judge my record on who I endorse for committeeman. I want to judge my record on whether I stood up for gay marriage, whether I stood up for women's reproductive rights, whether I stood up against NAFTA. I've stood up against every trade agreement. I have a 100% voting record with the AFL-CIO. I can go on down the list on environmental issues. So judge people in the totality of who they are and how they represent. I think that's how I got 76% of the vote in the last primary. And you know what? I got that vote in Logan Square. I got that vote throughout my congressional and very progressive parts of my congressional district, because I think people see that.
But people do want to take on power structures here because they feel like that's the only way they have a voice. And surely you understand that. You guys, why don't we get in one more question and then we'll wrap up. Question is about elected school board in Chicago in the context of your career-long commitment to addressing inequities.
Oh, I think having an elected school board is the ideal way of, having people. I think the mayor of the city of Chicago recommending people, and this is as a former city council member, simply recommending people and having a the city council is still a rubber stamp city council. To all my friends on the city council, it's still a rubber stamp city council. So whoever the mayor recommends is going to go. I have not seen one person recommended by one mayor since Harold Washington till today that's gotten recommended, that's been rejected. This is not like, Clarence Thomas every now and then gets rejected. It doesn't happen. So I think one of the ways to infuse, for lack of a better word, democracy in such an important aspect of our day-to-day life. And I think the city of Chicago, one of the unique things that it has is it has talent, has talented people. But I want to make sure that everybody is talented and everybody has the opportunity to learn and to be able to contribute. So I travel to lots of high schools quietly to talk to the youth. And I got to tell you something. Too much focus on gangbangers, drug dealers in the newspapers and in the media. Too little focus on those kids that are waking up every day, walking through dangerous neighborhoods under very extreme conditions and doing really, really well. Because I think if we focused on them, our energy, and not only that, our commitment to financial resources and the betterment of their future would be there. So I think we need to work on our education system, so I would be for an elected school board.
All right. Well, just one other quick news note. Our friend Ken Davis just came up and showed me the report that Ted Cruz has lost and is dropping out of the race. So I don't know. Everyone is very disappointed, but that obviously has other repercussions on it. So, okay, guys, we're out of time here. Really appreciate all you guys. It was a great turnout. Thank you all for coming out. Thanks to Congressman Gutierrez.
Thank you.
We'll be here again next month, and in the interim, we will be posting video of this on our website, firsttuesdaychicago.com. If you are not on our mailing list, come grab me, and I'll give you the information. Thanks, everybody. See you next month.